Hello again, everybody. My name is Carter Kent, and I'm the Western Region Sales Manager for BioWorks. And today I'll be talking about scouting and recognizing plant disease symptoms to optimize the timing of biopesticide applications. First, kind of a few terms or references to go over. When we talk about abiotic factors, those are environmental factors. So soil, air temperature, soil media, pH, nutrient availability, soil moisture level, rainfall, etc. Biotic are living factors. So plants, soil organisms, diseases, uh, plant pathogens, or environmental factors that interfere with plant physiology and symptoms, the visual expression of a disease, pest, or environmental factor. Diseases, pest, or environmental factors will cause damage in plant appearance, yield, and or quality. So scouting is probably the most important thing you'll want to take out of this session. The more you can do scouting, you're doing it on a regular basis, the better you'll be able to diagnose and start to preventively have preventative actions to lay in place when these symptoms come up again. I'm sure everybody has seen this before, but this is the infamous disease triangle. And basically what it states is that, plant infection depends upon three factors. One, you got to have a susceptible host. Two, you have to have uh, favorable environment for disease. And then lastly, you have to have disease-causing organism, the pathogen. The disease will only result if all three occur simultaneously. So if you can take one of those part of the triangle out, you're not going to have the issue, or you can minimize it. So essentials, these are some of the things that are really important in the scouting process. Make sure you have enough light to see the plants and any symptoms. Turn leaves over. Many pests and diseases, not all, start life on the underside of the leaves. You're going to want to check the roots. Uh, Things may look good above the ground, but things below may tell a totally different story. Meaning you could have a great canopy, but you don't have enough root mass out there to support the canopy, especially when you hit a stress period, which happens a lot with our growers. Be consistent. Take notes. Take pictures. These provide record for review and are invaluable for future years, and not just for yourself, but for your team of growers or IPM scout professionals. Initially, some typical symptoms, and initially similar to drought or starvations, plants will appear off color. They will have weakened and susceptible to attack. Young plants usually die off fairly rapidly. Older plants decline over time. Wilting and dieback will be other symptoms that will occur later. If you look at the root systems, roots will appear discolored or have brownish streaks in them. These are all signs that there's something, the plant's not healthy. So other observations and diagnosis, making an accurate diagnosis will depend upon being able to identify unique symptoms. However, many diseases produce similar symptoms. Dampening off in seedlings can be caused by many pathogens, Pythium, Fusarium, and Rhizoctonia, and all of those will look fairly similar to the naked eye. You really have to send those out to a lab to have that identified so you can properly attack that situation. Experience is another other area. If you send to see it on the same crop year in and year out, or in certain parts of the greenhouses, then you have to make sure we're addressing not only the variety, but also the area of the greenhouse where they're being grown in. What resources are available to assist in IDing? You have your extension specialists, you have publications, there's phone apps nowadays. There's a very good one called the Purdue Plant Doctor. What are other factors support for your diagnosis? Take pictures, document location, build your library for future reference. Those will be very critical in helping. So bacterial soft rot. Right now, a lot of growers, if you're selling poinsettias, You've already stuck your either you're stuck your URCs or you're starting to receive and maybe possibly some of your rooted liners, but Erwinia tends to be a big issue with your in poinsettias, especially when it's hot and humid like this, like it is right now. But anyways, bacterial soft rots frequently caused by bacterial pathogens or Erwinia. And oops, sorry, other common fungal disease is powdery mildew. And powdery mildew there are several species of powdery mildew that infect greenhouse ornamentals, but the symptoms are awfully similar. White to gray powdery spores produced on the upper leaf surface. Once the infection has established, powdery mildew initially develops on the undersides of the leaves. So preventative sprays should thus target both sides of the leaf. Curative on the upper surface, most critical to eliminate the spores. So what's that saying is that you want to make sure that you're using something very curative on the top of the plant, but early on, making sure you get good coverage of your biofungicide would be best. So another common fungal disease is rust. Like powdery mildew, rust disease are easy to identify. Rust fungi produce pustules of spores on the bottom side of the leaf. The pustules contain masses of rusty to orange colored spores. One of the areas, this is off label, but one of the areas is Botry stop plus tea tree oil is a viable treatment, although off label. The other one that would be viable would be a millstop cease application for control of rust. Downy mildew. Downy mildew is very difficult, and it's becoming more prevalent in the ornamental crops and herbs. Symptoms can be mistaken for nutrient imbalance or bacterial diseases. Symptoms occur on leaf's underside where the fungus sporulates as a fuzzy white or gray to purplish growth. Preventative contact sprays must contact the underside of the leaf. So hence coverage is really good, and you're going to want to make sure when you apply your spray that you apply to glisten and not runoff, because you want to make sure that the active ingredient is coming in good contact with the spores. Once the disease has entered the plant, it cannot be cured by contacts and you need to use a systemic or some sort of combination or rotation. Botrytis. Everybody's familiar with botrytis. It's gray mold. It's one fungal pathogen that is in general readily identified as well, just like powdery mildew. It has a wide host range and typically infects tender new growth and senescing tissue. Gray mold is favored by extended periods of cloudy, humid, wet weather. The pathogen gains a foothold in the small wounds, then progresses to cause disease in healthy tissue. One of the things I just mentioned here earlier, it's favorable to extended periods of cloudy, humid, wet weather. If you're looking at your calendar, your weather, listen to your weather person here a week or so in advance of a cloudy day. If you can get a preventative application out there for botrytis, you'll be much more effective than having to wait till you see it in the greenhouse. So bacterial leaf spots versus fungal spores. So bacterial leaf spots, many ornamentals and edibles display dark, neurotic looking spots on their leaves. Bacterial leaf spot on plants will discolor. In extreme cases will kill leaves. The images here on the left all are ivy, basil, zinnia, and geranium. All look very similar, but those are all examples of a bacterial leaf spot. Fungal leaf spots, which are on the right here, these are hydrangea, pepper, and geranium. But when you hold, and the way to identify the difference between the two, when you hold the infected leaves to the light edge, it will look as though they're translucent. Sorry, I said that incorrectly. The bacterial spots may have a translucent look to them, but uh, but they are tough to distinguish from one another. In these areas of application, cease, mill stop, battery stop from Bioworks, those are products that would actively control your bacterial leaf spot and fungal leaf spots. Viruses, the most common virus in the greenhouse is impatient neurotic spot virus. Not all plants are hosts, but at least 500 species are, including succulents, which may be asymptomatic, which just means they may not show the disease till it's later in its life cycle. INSV infected plants often cause symptomatic ring spot type of patterns left on the New Guinea impatient on the left. Many plants are asymptomatic or develop mosaic patterns as seen in the top picture right, begonia. Reliable test kits from AgDi are available to do on-site diagnosis. Many viruses, though, are insect vectored, so effective pest control techniques are critical to preventing these infections. And you cannot cure a virus of an infected plant. And that's it.